All right, it's Mrs. Hoekstra. Module 2, Lesson 11, page 68. Develop rules for multiplying signed numbers. Develop rules for multiplying signed numbers. You'll see the essential question I have up at the top. What are the sign rules for multiplication of integers? All right, when you are done, when you get to that summary, you should be able to answer that question. In fact, if you can't, I suggest you go back and rewatch this video. All right, so example 1. Right, it says part A, complete quadrants 1 and 4 of the table below to show how sets of matching integer cards will affect a player's score in the integer game. So we're going to have multiple sets. For example, 3 2s would increase your score by 2 plus 2 plus 2, or 6 points, right? And so that's why there's that 6 already filled up inside there. All right, so let's fill out quadrant 1. Quadrant 1, this should look very familiar to you all from maybe something you saw in elementary school, maybe 3rd or 4th grade, right? So see where it has the 1 by 1. See that? 1 times 1, right? I have 1 card valued at 1. My score only increases 1. I'm going to go across on that row there. So 1 by 2. Right? I have 1 card worth 2 points. I'm going to get 2 points, right? I only have 1 multiple of 3. It is 3. A 1 by 4 is 4, and 1 times 5 is 5. Right? Remember doing those when you were in elementary school? So let's go up 1 more. Right? I have 2 cards, each 1 point, so my score goes up 2 points. I have 2 cards, each worth 2 points. My score increases 4. I already have the 6 because it's 2 cards, each worth 3 points. 2 cards each worth 4 points would give me a score of 8. 2 cards each worth 5 points. My score goes up 10. Right? Remember doing these? All right. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. Right? 3 cards each worth 5. My score went up 15 points. All right, keep going. 4 times 1, I have 4 cards, each worth 1 point. It's a 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5, my score just went up 20 points. And last one, let's do 5 times 1. It's 5. Then we have what? 10, 15, 20, and 5 times 5 is 25. All right? What do all those cards in that particular quadrant, what does that represent? Well, I pick up, right? I'm picking up positive value cards. To pick up means I'm increasing, right? Pick up the positive value cards. All right? That's what that's talking about. Well, let's come down here and let's go down into quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 is the one right below it. All right, quadrant 4 is the one below it. And let's go over here. So I'm going to pick up 1 card worth -1 points, right? So 1 times -1 is -1. I'm going to go, let's keep going down this time. Let's just work our way down. 1 times -2 is -2. 1 times -3 is -3. 1 times -4 is -4. And 1 times -5 is -5. Okay? If I go and pick up 2 cards, each worth -1, right? I now have -2. 2 times -2 is -4. 2 times -3 is -6. 2 cards each worth -4. I've lost 8 points. 2 cards each worth -5. I lost 10 points, right? Because I have 2 cards each worth -5. -5 and -5 gives me my -10. I know I'm going through these fast. All right, 3 cards each worth -1. I just lost 3 points. 3 cards worth -2. -2, a -2, and a -2 is -6. 3 cards each worth -3. -3 and another -3 and another -3, -9. 3 and -4, I'm going to have -12 points, and 3 and -5, I'll have -15 points, right? -5, a -5, a -5, -15. All right, we're going to keep going. 4 and -1 is -4. 4 and -2 gives me -8. 4 cards, each worth -3. I just lost 12 points. 4 cards, each worth -4. I'm now -16 points. 4 times -5, I just lost 20 points in the game. Okay, let's try that last column. So I'll have what? -5, -10, -15, -20, -25. So what do all those that I just did in green, what do those all represent? Right? Well, I am picking up, because notice this means I have matching cards. I'm picking up, but what kind of cards? Negative. Picking up the negative value cards. And by picking up negative value cards, my score actually drops. Okay? So before we go any further, let's just keep looking at what patterns do you see on that side. So I'm going to make my scale a little bit smaller so I can see everything. What do you notice is going on in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4? I see that quadrant 1, right? I see that quadrant 1, all of those are positive, aren't they? All my answers are positive. And I notice in quadrant 4, IV stands for 4. I notice all my cards are negative. However, I do know something they have in common. I had to pick up these cards, right? Pick up cards, right? That means I'm adding cards to my pile in my hand, but yet the one my score was getting bigger, the other one my score was getting smaller. Okay, now it wants me to fill in. If you notice, this section here is empty. You see that? That whole spot right there is empty. So what they want us to do is to fill this in. Okay, fill that spot in. So what numbers do we have to put in there? Well, if this represents kind of basically 0, so if I am going to the right, my numbers are positive. So if I go to the left, my numbers are going to be negative. So -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. Okay? This represents removing cards. Right? That's going to represent removing cards. Well, across the page on page, it says part B. It says complete quadrant 2 of the table. So I'm not going to flip over to my next page. I'm just going to do that from here. But I am going to zoom this in. Let's go to quadrant 2. So again, I have removing 1 card worth 1 point. I've lost a point, right? Let's keep going with go up the column. Removing 1 card that's worth 2 points. I've now lost 2. Remove 1 card that's worth 3, so I'm losing 3 points. Remove 1 card worth 4 points, so it's -4. And -1 and -5, or excuse me, +5 gives me a -5, right? I removed a 5. What if I remove 2 cards, each worth 1 point? Well, it's -2. What if I remove 2 cards, each worth 2 points? I've lost 4 points. If I remove 2 cards, each worth 3 points, I'm now losing 6. Remove 2 cards worth 4 points is -8. And if I remove 2 cards worth 5 points, I've now lost 10 points. Okay, you see how this is all working? So if I remove 3 cards, each worth 1 point, I've lost 3. 3 cards removed worth 2 points is losing 6 points. -3 and 3 gives me a -9. -3 and 4 gives me -12. -3 and 5 gives me -15. Okay, what if I remove 4 cards of every type? Well, removing 4 cards of a 1, -4, -8, -12, -16, -20, right? All removing powers or values, excuse me, of 4. And then I've got -5 times 1 is -5, -5 times 2 is -10, -15, -20, and -25. What do you notice about all the numbers in quadrant 2? all those that I just did, right? Here I am going to remove, or we are removing positive value cards. If I remove positive value cards, my overall score, though, still goes down, right? What relationship do you notice, or what's happening here between quadrant 2 and quadrant 1, right? They're all positive value cards, right? And they're all the same digits, just some are positive and some are negative, aren't they? So if I go across the page here, right, quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 all use positive value cards, right? They have the same digits. They have the same digits, but different signs, right? Some are positive, some are negative. They have the same digits, different positive or negative values. What about 2 and 4? Take a look across the page. I'm going to flip over to the other page here a second. What about 2 and 4? Look at the red one and the green one. What do you notice? Everything's the same, isn't it? Interesting. Let me go to the other page. What do I notice? I notice quadrant 2 and quadrant 4 have the same values. Everything's the same. It's not like, oh yeah, you know, these were positive, these are negative. No, everything's identical. The same digits, the same signs, everything. Okay? So based on what you're seeing here on page 68, I want you to make a prediction of what you think will happen in quadrant 3. Will they be positive? Will they be negative? Will it be a mix? What do you think? I want you to put that prediction. The only person who's going to know is you. I want you to make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen in quadrant 3? Quadrant 3, I predict will have what? What do you think? Write them in there. All right, so let's fill in part 3. Okay, let's fill in that other spot. I'm going to zoom this in so I can see it a little better and write in there. And let's see here. We're going to remove one card that's worth -1, right? We're going to remove a -1. If I remove a -1, my score actually increased 1. If I remove a -2, my score just increased 2. If I remove a -3, my score just increased 3 and 4 and then 5, right? Removing a negative actually makes my score go up. Removing 2 -1s, my score is now going to become 2. Removing 2 -2s gives me a 4. Removing 2 -3s gives me a 6. Removing 2 -4s is an 8. And removing 2 -5s, my score just increased 10, right? Taking out a 5 and taking out another 5. My score just went up 10 points. What if I remove 3 -1s, right? Take off a -1, a -1, and a -1. My score increased 3. And then if I take out 3 -2s, my score just went up 2. If I remove 3 -3s, my score went up 9. Removing 3 -4s, my score goes up 12. And if I remove 3 -5s, my score just went up 15 points. All right, think you can figure out how the next 2 columns go? Let's fill those in. Removing 4 -1s is 4. Next comes 8. Then comes 12. Then is 16. And lastly would be what? 20. And then my last one, if I remove all my 5 of values of everything, I would have 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. So in this case, removing, right, this represents removing the negative value cards. And removing the negative value cards actually makes my score go up. So I'm going to put that on the other page. Okay, I'm going to come down here and let's change that to what happens to a player's score when he removes a matching set of cards with negative values. The score goes up, right? Removing negative value cards increases the score. So, is it possible to know the sign of a product of two integers just by knowing which quadrant the integer is located? Okay, I'm going to go back. Let's take a look at this page here. Is it possible to know the sign of a product of two integers just by knowing what quadrant it is located? Right? Look at the purple quadrant. Look at quadrant 1. Does it stay consistent up there? Are they always all positive? If I continued it, would it stay always positive? What if I go to the green one, right? Quadrant 4, the second one we did. If I come down here, look at all those values. Is that going to stay consistent if I continued that pattern? And again, do the same thing with quadrant 2. Look at all your answers in there. Did it stay consistent? Or is there some kind of random thing that I was like, whoop, changed its mind? And again, on quadrant 3, right? The signs stay consistent, don't they? All right, so I'm going to put that in here. The signs, right? If they're positive, it stays positive. If it's negative in that quadrant, it stays negative. The signs stay constant or consistent, however you want to say it, in each quadrant. Okay, it doesn't change willy-nilly. Okay, that's why a lot of people like math, because it just always stays, you know what you're going to get. All right, which quadrant contains what kind of values? So quadrant 1 and quadrant 3 were both positive values, weren't they? Always. I know I'm going to always have a constant positive answer there. And then quadrant 2 and quadrant 4, every single time I was going to get a negative value. Right? We'll stay constant that whole entire time. All right, let's go to the top of page 70. Top of page 70 says exercise 1. Ooh. This is usually when I say pause. Okay, so we're going to pause here a moment. Let me explain what I want you to do. I want you to pause and try it. Okay, let's read the directions. Generate real-world situations that can be modeled by each of the following multiplication problems. I'm not asking for you to solve the answer. Give me a story problem in which -3 times 5 would work. Okay, and if you have to, you can talk about it in the world of the integer game, if that makes it easier for you. All right, in fact, one of my examples is like that. So I want you to try your own examples. Your examples and mine are probably going to look a little different, but you probably will get the gist of it. So go ahead and hit pause and see if you can write your own story problems to match these situations. All right, so here are my 3 examples. Yours might look different. Okay, but on the first one, since I have a -3, I said I lost 3, and then my 5, I said $5 bills, right? I lost 3, right? -3. Here's the -3, and then here is my $5 bills. Okay, and so then the question is, how much did I lose? Okay, so -3 times 5, I can even just go back and look at that on page 68. I lost right? Negative $15. I have negative $15. No bueno, no good. All right, check out my next one. This one was a little trickier, so I did use the integer game to help me with this one. I said I removed 6 cards, each worth negative 3 points in the integer game, right? Removing 6 cards, there's my negative 6, right? Here's the negative 6, each worth 3 points. That's kind of easy to see in the problem. And then how many points did my score change, right? So look at that negative and negative spot where we removed negative points. What actually happened? I actually gained 18 points, right? I actually gained 18 points. And then the last one, you know, I think I've told you all that I had lost a bunch of weight last year, so here's an example of something like that. For 4 months in a row, 4 months, there's my 4. I lost 7 pounds. Lost 7 pounds, there's that negative 7, right? I lost 7 pounds each month. How much weight did I lose altogether? So look at the spot where I was picking up cards that were of negative value, right? So 4 times 7, that's what, 28, right? That's 28. And then what quadrant is it in? I'm adding negative 7 cards, so it's going to be a negative 28. All right, so here's the big idea. Here's the summary, okay? So the sign rules, remember the essential question wanted to be able to have you guys do this. What do you notice about the sign rules? Okay, if I have a positive value and I multiply it by another positive value, this is the math you've done your entire life, you always get a positive answer, right? You have been doing that since 3rd grade when you started learning multiplication facts. But then there's this other weird one that was like if you had a negative number and you multiplied it by a negative number, this is that quadrant 3, right? This was Q1. There's a bell to let you guys go, but you got a couple more seconds with me. Q1 and Q3, negative times a negative, that was a positive as well if you look at all those things in quadrant 3. Okay, then if I also looked at quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Oops, help if I would write that correctly. Quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Quadrant 2 and quadrant 4, I had a negative number times a positive number. Or it was a positive times a negative, but either way, you know, commutative property lets me flip-flop those. So what kind of answers did I get in quadrants 2 and 4? They were always negative, right? Well, I want you guys to catch something here. These two, look at positive, positive gives me a positive. Negative, negative gives me a positive. The signs were the same. They had the same sign, right? Look at quadrants 2 and 4. What do you notice? Negative, positive, or it was a positive, negative. And if the signs are different, what did we get? We got a negative answer. They have a different sign. If I multiply 2 numbers with a different sign, I got a negative answer. All right? So I know this was kind of a long video. There's a lot to do in here. Hopefully you did okay with it. And I will see you all later.